So happy you could join us today. Please mute yourself and turn off your video so you can just focus in on the webinar. I will be presenting the webinar along with Valerie Knight DeGangi, Program Officer for Valley Community Foundation, Jackie Downing, Director of Grant Making and Not-for-Profit Support, and Denise Canning, Director of Grant Operations. The goals of this webinar are to familiarize you with the responsive grants process and other grant opportunities at both the Community Foundation for Greater New Haven and the Valley Community Foundation. A few housekeeping items. The webinar is scheduled to end at 3:30 p.m. We will make every effort to end promptly. You are able to type in questions in the chat box. This is the only way for you to ask questions since you are muted. We will make every attempt to answer the questions during and after the webinar. We will be stopping at points throughout the webinar to answer questions. If you have any trouble viewing the webinar or with your audio, you can phone in instead of using the speakers on your computer. The Zoom phone number is 1-646-876-9923. 1-646-876-9923. And the ID number is 876-1043-1940. 876-1043-1940. The webinar will be posted on both the Foundation's websites next week. From these websites, you will be able to click on all the hyperlinks that you see throughout the presentation to access documents and web pages. So here's a map. It looks a little faint as I'm looking at it now. The Community Foundation for Greater New Haven was established in 1928. It is one of the oldest and largest community foundations in the United States and remains the largest grant maker to not-for-profits in its 20-town region in the heart of central Connecticut. That region includes 5 towns served by its partner in philanthropy, the Valley Community Foundation, which was established in 2004. The Valley Community Foundation fulfills the mission of the Community Foundation in the Valley's unique 5 cities and towns of Ansonia, Derby, Oxford, Shelton, and Seymour. The 2 foundations work collaboratively to address the needs of and seize opportunities for their service areas. The Community Foundation for Greater New Haven and the Valley Community Foundation are more than just grant makers. We work with donors to achieve their charitable goals and with not-for-profits to build a stronger community. We convene the community around important issues. You may have attended some of these convenings that we've been doing for many years. It is the largest grant maker to not-for-profits serving Greater New Haven, making over $35 million in grants and distributions last year, including grants from its affiliate, the Valley Community Foundation, and distributes from organizational funds. We hold a number of organizations endowments here at the foundation and help invest them and help them grow. We manage an endowment made up of more than 1,100 individually named funds, and we are valued now at near $900 million. We provide technical assistance to not-for-profit staff and board members looking to create a stronger impact in their community. Jackie Downing, who manages our capacity building program, will share more further into the webinar about our capacity building efforts.
So we wanted to talk a little bit about our grant eligibility. And for the most part, these are the eligibility requirements to apply for a grant. Must be tax exempt under section 501c3 of the IRS code, or have a fiscal sponsor that is tax exempt with the appropriate tax exempt code. All applicants must provide services in our 20-town region. Sarah showed the map in the slide before and talked about our towns a little bit. You do not have to be located in our 20 towns in order to apply. You just have to be serving residents in our 20-town region. Doesn't have to be all the towns. It could be one, it could be several towns, or it could be all. Applicants also must comply with all applicable local, state, and federal anti-discrimination laws in order to apply. All organizations must, or all applicants must be up to date with all their reporting. If you've gotten a grant from us before, that has a reporting requirement. Projects that do not generally receive consideration include religious activities, endowment campaigns, travel, previously incurred debts, and funding deficits. So in order to apply to the foundation, and if you get a grant, then the grant is active from the day of the award. So grants at the foundation do not fund expenses in the rears. So we don't fund reimburse for expenses that have already happened. We do accept requests for capital projects, and we consider that part of what we call capacity building support. The only way to apply for capacity building support right now is through our small grants program, and we'll go over that later in the webinar. Requests for capital projects could include things like relocation, building, equipment, furniture, renovations. We're looking also to provide through many of our grant processes any requests and support that is related to managing the impacts of COVID. And we're just gonna stop for some questions. Jackie's gonna read to see if there's anything that turned up in our chat.
Yes, I think the only question we have at this point is the session going to be recorded? And yes, it is being recorded. It will be available on our website next week so that you can refer back to it when you need it. And that's the only question for now.
Okay,
Thanks, Jackie.
this is Sarah again. So I just want to talk to you about grant making in general and for 2022. This year, we are continuing to be flexible in our funding. Last year, we relaxed the eligibility requirements for general operating support. Any not-for-profit can make a case for general operating support and apply as long as its service delivery and population that they serve is in our 20-town region. As most of you know, we changed our grant-making management system to Blackbaud 3 years ago. Denise will describe how to access the application through this portal further on in the webinar. It's new for some, but maybe not for others. Question, we have worked very hard to simplify the applications. We continue to try to make it easier for not-for-profits to apply to us. We have worked to make sure that the questions are in plain language, information that both the not-for-profits and we can use to understand issues and evaluate impact. As a result of moving to Blackbaud, some changes mean duplication of information, but we will streamline future applications like mission, vision, and programs once they occupy their place in Blackbaud. But you can copy and paste from GiveGrader profile because, as you can see later on, the GiveGrader profile is part of the application process. There will be character limits to questions on the applications, so try to be succinct in your answers. We appreciate your patience as we continue to make change. Further into the webinar, we will be sharing the timeline for all the grant opportunities open to not-for-profits. As we did last year, multi-year opportunity for general operating support has a shorter turnaround than in previous years. Final decisions will be made in July. And there are additional rolling grant opportunity processes with no deadlines. Whenever you're ready, you can call and ask for an application or get an application online to apply to the foundation. The foundation board is making available an additional $3.2 million this year across all grant programs, in addition to the grant making budget of $3 million. So in total, over $6 million available through our grant processes this year. These additional resources come from a combination of an unprecedented extraction from the foundation's discretionary endowments and from generous donor contributions. This additional funding is to address the impact of the pandemic on not-for-profits and the populations they serve, and to address racial inequities. These additional funds are added to our rolling grant processes as well as our responsive process, and grants for racial equity and creative healing through the arts, and grants for training for BIPOC leaders. Jackie will highlight these last two grant opportunities further in the webinar.
I'd like to share with you our offerings for competitive grant opportunities. And these are available for both New Haven, Greater New Haven, and Valley-based organizations. So these are opportunities that are open for all organizations that serve our 20 towns. The first one is responsive grant. This is for general operating support, which we consider flexible funding for organizations to help achieve their mission. Opportunity, organizations are able to apply for either 1 year or multi-years, 2 or 3 years. The applications are already open on the Community Foundation for Greater website, as well as the Valley Community Foundation website. And we do have a deadline date of February 24th, 2022, this year at 5 o'clock. Animal shelter grants is next. We have a grant opportunity for nonprofit animal shelters to come in and ask for flexible funding. They can ask for general support, project support, capacity building support, and that's a rolling process that's ongoing. And that grant application also on both websites. Then we have our racial equity and creative healing through the arts grant process. This is for COVID-19 response and racial justice. It's a small grant program that puts artists and art organizations back to work. The deadline date is May 2nd, and that application should be available next month. And then our BIPOC-led leadership cohort. This is leadership development for leaders or nonprofit staff. And Jackie will talk a little bit about this later in the webinar. And that deadline this year is June 6th. And also our consultant support program. This is ongoing. This is short-term project or building capacity for one time only to help with a strategic consultant opportunity to hire a consultant to come in and help with some capacity building and infrastructure support. So these processes that I just brought up will be spoke about in detail in the webinar in a few minutes. But the next two, career pathways and basic needs funds, the career pathways is a new opportunity that we're providing this year. This is funding to prepare residents who have been historically underserved for middle to high skilled quality jobs in local economic growth sectors to help improve family economic stability. This is still in the design process. We don't have a deadline date established yet, but we do urge you, if you see yourself fitting into this criteria, to contact one of our staff members, Yolanda Caldera Durant. Her email is there, and also at the end of this presentation, her contact information will be there. And also our basic needs fund. This is for basic materials needs support. Again, this is a process that's being designed, and the deadline date is to be determined. And Sarah's going to talk a little bit about our responsive grant process for general operating.
So as Denise has just outlined, you saw the whole gamut of grant opportunities that are open to both foundation, not-for-profits, and so we're going to go through each one. So I'm going through the responsive grant type, which is for general operating support. And this is intended to be flexible sources of support. You do not need to identify a particular use it will be applied to. It's to further the mission and the work of an organization rather than for a specific purpose or project. It's important for the foundation to support operating costs of organizations in this uncertain time and challenging times for not-for-profits. And you don't have to be anything other than who you are. you must have an established give grader profile, and you'll see that in the timeline for putting your application together, that you need to have that profile done before you submit your application. If you don't already have one, or updated. If you have one, make sure it's updated, because we do use the give grader profile as part of the application in the review of it. An organization cannot apply if it has a current general operating support grant that extends beyond 2022. The average size grant size is between $20,000 to $30,000 per year. So if you're asking for multi-year, because this is the multi-year grant opportunity, this responsive grant, you could get 1, 2, or 3 years, the grant's awarded. And as I said, the typical annual amount of that grant is between $25,000 and $35,000. The application is available on both websites. It's one door. The application isn't different if you go to the Valley Community Foundation website or the Community Foundation of Greater New Haven website. It's the same. It goes through the same portal, and it's going through the same review process. It's just that you have two different places in which you could go and access that application. We're interested in organizations thinking long-term in terms of how they're funding their organization, and how would the foundation's grant fit within your long-term funding strategy. It can be used for ongoing or new programs and services, as well as for administrative and infrastructure. As I said, it allows the organization to be who you are. If you have a responsive grant that ends in 2021, consider applying for general operating support this year.
We're going to
We're
stop.
going to stop for questions.
Sorry, Sarah.
Go ahead, Denise.
Sure. So we're going to stop for some questions. Are brand new nonprofits able to apply for the general operating grant? Sarah?
Yes, you can. It may be challenging, so you need to think about whether that's where you really belong, or whether the first time coming to the foundation, you might want to ask for a small grant, which is up to $15,000 or less. You do need to be a 501c3. If not a 501c3, you do need to have a fiduciary who is a 501c3 through which you could receive a grant.
The next question, does the purchase of a building fall under capacity building? Yes. So purchase of a building does fall under capacity building support, and you'll see further on in the webinar that the only opportunity to apply for capacity building is through our small grants program. There's another question. With general operating support grants, I see it runs from 25 to 30,000. Is that over multiple years, or can 25,000 be requested in a multi-year grant for each year?
Yeah, it's an average annual grant. The number, the $20,000 to $30,000 is an average number for an annual grant. And so yes, you could ask for 20,000 each of 3 years for a total of 60,000, or $30,000 each of 3 years for a total of 90,000.
Do you have to be a nonprofit to apply for the competitive grant?
Yes.
For the most part, yes. The eligibility requirement is you have to have a 501c3 tax exemption from the IRS or any applicable tax exemption, or have a fiscal sponsor that will apply on your behalf with the tax exemption. What is the amount for the consultant support program? That's a good question. So Jackie actually is going to get to that specificity in a few minutes. So if you could wait on that, Mara, that would be great. What is the turnaround time once applied to receive grant funds? Really varies, Billy, with each process. And again, we're going to try to get into that specificity later on in the webinar when we talk about each process. We're going to just do a few more. My org has a grant from the Community Foundation for 2002, but it's not a GOS grant. It's from Stepping Forward Holding Fund. Can we still apply for a general operating support this year? Actually, you're you're talking about a fund, not a process. So you might want to email me after the webinar and we can figure that out together. Can an organization apply for more than one type of grant if more than one is applicable? Sarah?
Yeah, yeah, if you wanted to come in for a small grant and you were successful in that, that does not preclude you from coming in and asking for a responsive grant. So you could do both, but I would ask you to think about what is your higher priority. And we understand that filling out applications is a time-consuming process, although we have tried to simplify it. So you might want to think about where you put your effort. If you're asking for general operating support through the Responding Program, which is a possibility for multi-year grants, that may be where you might want to expend your energy, because those are flexible dollars that you could use in any kind of way you want to supplement what other sources of funds you come to get your work done. So and also because, there's a lot of organizations asking for funding, and we don't have deep pockets as much as it does sound like a lot of money we have. It goes rather quickly. And so think about where you want to spend your energy and where might be the biggest opportunity for you.
We're going to answer one more question and then we're going to keep going to the webinar. Can the grant be used to hire a construction manager and housing counselor for the affordable housing counselor along with daily operation of the program? Any kind of staff costs, we would consider general operating support. And as Sarah said, we're not asking you to be prescriptive how you're going to use the money. If you need staff to achieve your mission, then certainly you can apply for general operating support and use it for staffing costs along with other expenses. There'll be other opportunities later on in the webinar as well for us to answer questions. So we're just gonna go on. For some reason, okay. Sorry about that. I was having trouble moving the slides. So we just wanted to give you a brief overview of the review process and timeline for the responsive grant process that Sarah just went over. That, as a reminder, is your chance to ask for general operating support and ask for multiple years of funding. So the application due date is February 24th at 5 o'clock, as we mentioned. But along with the application, we ask organizations to fill out a Give Greater profile, because the Give Greater profile in the application that you submit on February 24th goes hand in hand. So if you're planning on doing an application, submitting an application, we ask that the week prior, February 17th, is when you have your Give Greater profile fully completed. From February to July, we'll be looking and reviewing the applications and possibly contacting applicants with further questions. And then our board of directors makes funding decisions in July. And then I'm going to pass it along to Jackie for animal shelter grants.
Okay, thank you, Denise. I'm going to talk a little bit about the grant processes that are now, in addition to the responsive, which is available to both Valley and Greater New Haven organizations in a combined process. These grants that I'm going to talk about are also available to Valley and New Haven or Greater New Haven organizations in a combined process. One of those are the animal shelter grants. These are funding for independent, nonprofit animal shelters, or any organizations that give shelter to animals in our 20-town region. You can apply at any time for up to $7,500. It's a rolling application, which means you can apply at any time. It takes about 8 weeks to get an answer for this application. Those are the links to our websites. Let me give you specifically, where, if you have a pencil ready, if you are going to either of our websites, you can find information on these processes. That grid that we saw earlier in the presentation is on our website, CFGNH, under Strengthening Nonprofits, then Apply for a Grant. If you go to the Valley Community Foundation's website, it's under Impacting the Valley. then click apply for a grant. So all of that information can be found in those grids. Animal shelters for both organizations. Let's go on to the next slide. And this is grants for racial equity and creative healing through the arts. This is, again, a combined process. We call it REACH, Racial Equity and Creative Healing Through the Arts. It's designed to employ local artists at a living wage and allow arts organizations to maintain and create new connections with audiences and supporters. It's designed to elevate Black, Brown, and Indigenous artists and to support a creative and equitable recovery in our region. The grant guidelines include are only for arts organizations and organizations with a history of arts programming. So if you are an organization that does something in a different area, and you just decided you'd like to do some arts, this is not for you. This is for an organization that has been working in the arts for a while. Awards range from $5,000 to $20,000 per year. It's a 2-year grant. They can be used for new or existing projects. There's also additional support for administrative expenses that comes to each organization. You do not have to be a 501c3 in order to apply. You can be an artist, an individual artist, or a group of artists. So some of the kinds of things that we looked at, we saw last year, are projects that might be included: public conversations that break down systemic racism issues, programs that center BIPOC artists and BIPOC culture and history, programs that bring disparate groups together to co-create, activities that fight isolation throughout the community, opportunities for collective mourning, comfort, and healing, projects that supplement or complement the public school curriculum and engage youth. Applications this year will be available on February 1st. The application that you'll see on February 1st is a link to a Google Doc that goes directly to the Arts Council. This process is administered by the Arts Council and a group of community artists, arts administrators, and arts patrons. They make all the decisions. They designed the process, and the first stage application goes directly to the Arts Council. The deadline to apply is May 2nd. So the panel will, after May 2nd, meet and look at review everything that has come in from February 1st to May 2nd. There'll be some questions that come after that time, and then the panel will make their decisions in June or July, depending on the volume of applications that have come in. Let's go to the next slide. And this is our BIPOC cohort, for nonprofit leadership. This is leadership development for emerging leaders of color. We're identifying people who are interested in, they're now occupying middle management positions, development directors, program directors, assistant managers, and we are encouraged, and they aspire to be executive directors. So we're doing this training program so that people can rise up into the senior level of an organization. We will have 10 to 12 people in the program per year. We're in our first cohort this year. We have 10 people working in the cohort. Along with that comes a $15,000 grant for 2 years to the organization where the person is currently employed. They have to be currently employed as a middle management type person at a nonprofit. This is not for founder-led organizations. If you are a person who has started an organization and you'd like to strengthen that organization by being a part of this program, it's not the right place to be. This is about personal leadership development for mobility within the nonprofit sector. These and what we look for in the qualities of the candidates is a dedication to personal commitment to Greater New Haven and the Valley region, and personal commitment to the nonprofit sector. So they'll be staying here in this area and aspiring to a larger role in the nonprofit sector. So we look at the qualities of the person that has applied, not the organization, but the organization does get a $15,000 grant for 2 years in order to release the time for this person. Applications will open April 4th. The deadline to apply is June 6th. Again, this is a committee-driven program. We have a dozen or so leaders of color who review the applications and move folks forward into the program. And we can move on to the next slide, the consultant support program. I know that there was a question about the consultant support program. It's not a grant program. You will not be granted money. Money does not go into the organization. It is a program where we will cover the cost of a consultant for you for up to about 15 hours. Up to about 15 hours of a consultant's time. And we ask that the consultant work at a rate not more than $125 an hour. We've had some flexibility on that for certain issues. So the consultant support program does all kinds of different projects and program. It's really a thought partner to help you through one particular situation. It's not designed to be part of a larger engagement. We're not going to do the first $1,000 toward a $10,000 strategic plan. That's not how this works. It has to be a discrete $1,000 project to get a website updated, or a short project to help with some other IT issues, a bit of training for the staff. We also have special funds set aside in this program for diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging. So if you are working with your board and or staff on DEI and B, we encourage you to apply for this program. This is an opportunity through the DE&I work to be able to apply as part of something larger. We hope you'll do more than we can cover for you. So please, if it's part of a larger project, please do apply, but only if it's DE&I work. We can cover the consultant's time and some other costs, some incidental costs that might be out of pocket for your organization, but you can only apply once in a calendar year. So think carefully about the project that you'd like to have a thought partner on, and you reach out to either Valerie Knight-DeGangi from the Valley or from myself for any project. We can talk you through and see if it's appropriate for this program and help you understand, and then get the very simple application to you.
Hey, thanks, Jackie. We're going to pause and look at the chat for more questions. Oh, kudos to the consulting program was a lifesaver for us. Thank you, Jackie.
Oh, Angela.
No, thank you.
Thank you. Can I just remind everyone, if you're not on mute, please mute yourself.
But I did,
Go ahead, Denise.
As an organization, is there a way to become a host to a BiPod grant recipient? How does that work? How are they placed within organizations, or is that not how it works? Jackie, we'll hand this one over to you.
I'm not sure about that question. Are we talking about the Bipod cohort?
It seems that way.
These people are already employed. They have great jobs where they are. So they're not looking for placements unless Paige, I see it's come from Paige. Paige, if you'd like to step down as the ED of the Milford Arts Council and make room for someone new, I probably have a couple of candidates who might like to take the job, but I don't see that happening. So we're not placing them within organizations. They already have good jobs and they're thriving where they are. So that's not how the program works. If you have more questions, I can fill in more details.
Another BIPOC question, the BIPOC leadership question. For the program, does designated leader need to be employed by the nonprofit, or can they also be a consultant or serve on the board?
No, they must be employed by the nonprofit. This is a career path program. So it has to be someone who is working in nonprofits who aspires to a higher position in nonprofits.
And how long is the leadership program, Jackie? Daily, weekly?
The commitment is a 2-year commitment. The first year they are meeting bi-weekly. They have a 9-month training program with UConn. And at the end of this program, they can transfer the course to get credit from UConn. UConn has also offered $1,000 in scholarship money in case they would like to use the credits toward undergraduate or graduate degrees. So they can use that. So it's a 9-month educational program. At the end of that, each candidate is going to do an organizational assessment with the organization that hosts them or that they work for. And they'll be doing that. That's probably about a 5 or 6 month project to do. Some of you may have been through CCAT, the Core Capacity Assessment Tool. They'll be doing that with each of their organizations, and then they'll take the lead on working with board and staff to implement some of the changes that are identified through the assessment. And then they'll meet as a cohort during the second year just to have the camaraderie and the professional experience that they can have with one another. And they'll also be meeting occasionally with the new cohort that will start this year. So we'll have 20 people working together as a group.
Thanks, Jackie. Sarah, this one's for you. How many responsive grant applications do you typically receive and how many are funded?
Okay, it could be anywhere from 100 to 120. Sometimes we've had as many as 130. Don't know what to expect this year. Last year we had a few less, and because we had an extraordinary opportunity for more resources, the positive response was really good last year. I think we had 80 something applications and 72 organizations got funded. In the past, it's been between a 40 to 60% positive return and getting in a grant.
Sarah, another one for you. Do animal shelter grants include wildlife rehab facilities?
If it's a not-for-profit, I mean, we tend towards animals who are being housed in people's homes in terms of, but we have done some wildlife support for shelters who are in our region or who are serving animals in our region.
Great, a few more and then we'll go on with the webinar. Since my nonprofit is brand new, when I'm setting up my profile, can I list the accomplishments of my parent organization that has been open for 9 years? So Jackie, I'm assuming he's talking about Give Greater profile.
No, I think that's where, I don't see the question in the chat. Is that from Billy?
Yes.
No, I don't think the for-profit experience would resonate with what you plan to do with your nonprofit. So I think you need to talk about the nonprofit and what the aspirations are. You don't have a track record for your nonprofit. You can talk about any of the charitable work that you might have done, but the accomplishments of the for-profit would not be relevant to your aspirations for the nonprofit.
Does the operating grant support shifting part-time positions to full-time? So I would say yes. Again, this is general operating grants are flexible funding. As Sarah said, we don't ask you to tell us how you are going to use the dollars. We simply give grant flexible funding to organizations to help them achieve their mission. So you can use it for staffing, bringing part-time people to full-time. You can use it for rent. You can use it for utilities. You can use it for program. So anything that the organizations need in order to achieve their mission. I'm going to take 2 more. If the animal shelter serves some of the 20 towns, but is not located in one of the 20 towns, can it still apply? And the answer is yes. And actually the answer is yes for the majority of our grant processes, that in order to be eligible to apply, you don't need to be located in our 20 towns. You need to simply serve the residents in our 20 towns. And for animal shelters, you are, if you're sheltering animals and adopting them out, then in our 20 town region, then you are serving our 20 towns.
And let me add to that, Denise, and this applies for all statewide organizations for all of our programs or regional organizations that extend beyond our region. There has to be a significant portion of your operation. If you house one dog that was found in Oxford and the rest of your animals come from Trumbull and elsewhere, that's not going to qualify you, and you have a huge shelter. It has to be, and I'm not going to give you a round number because percentages are not necessarily, it's something that would be somewhat flexible, But if 2, 3, 5% of your operation is in our area, then that may not be enough for a grant. If you're 20% above 20%, above 40%, then we're going to take a more serious look at the application. But if only a small percentage or small number of people that you serve are in our area, then we have to make sure that we're only funding those that are really serving the majority in our area.
Great. Jackie, a quick question about the consultant support program. Can an organization apply for that support every year?
Right. I saw a couple of questions about consultant support. Let's do that. And so move on so that we make sure that we have time. So this will be the last question.
Okay.
Yes, you can come back, but it has to be a different project. You cannot come back for continuing support for the same project. Again, it has to be discrete, start and finish and be over. We do have a list of consultants that are our go-tos that we've worked with, that we trust, that we can deploy in lots and lots of different areas. And we're happy to share that with you if you're in the consultant support program, or if you just like advice on who to hire for anything else that you're doing. You can also use your own consultant as long as they agree to work for our hourly, not more than our hourly rate.
Great. Thank you. This next slide is about our grant opportunities that are strictly for Greater New Haven organizations. So if you remember, the other opportunities we shared were for both the Valley and Greater New Haven organizations. This is only available and for New Haven based, Greater New Haven based organizations. And the first is our small grants program. This is your opportunity to apply for program or capacity building support. And you can also come in for general operating support. This is for small organizations with operating budgets under 2 million. You can ask for up to $15,000. And it's an ongoing rolling process. The application is not on our website. You can just email me and I will email you the application. We also have sponsorships. This is for one-day fundraising events. This is also a rolling process. And there is no budget eligibility criteria for this. All organizations can apply as long as they're Greater New Haven based. Both of these processes, we're going to go more in depth in the webinar. But the next two, the Quinnipiac River Fund, that and the Neighborhood Leadership Program, those have already started. You can see the application is due in next week. The Quinnipiac River Fund is specifically for projects that protect and conserve the Quinnipiac River. And organizations working on these priorities are welcome to apply. And the Neighborhood Leadership Program, this is for individuals that are interested in working with their neighborhoods and civic engagement. So actually the individuals are applying for both a training program to become leaders and also for small grant dollars to do some projects in their neighborhood. The deadline date is January 19th, and you have to be a resident of New Haven, Hampden, East Haven, or West Haven in order to apply. Now we're going to talk about small grants. The first type is project support. This is for new or existing programs. You don't have to create a new program in order to the foundation and request dollars. You can be an existing program. Again, you have to be an organization with a small operating budget of 2 million or less. You can ask for up to $15,000. The turnaround for small grants is about 8 weeks, and contact me for an application. And also capacity building support, which we consider a short-term financial assistance to help build the infrastructure of the organization. So it could be hiring a consultant for board development or for staff training, or it also includes capital requests if you're looking to for new equipment or renovating a bathroom to become ADA compliant. Anything like that, you can come in for capacity building support. And it's the same thing goes, these are all 1 year, small grants are all 1 year grants. You can come in if you are an organization with an operating budget under 2 million, you can ask for $15,000 for this as well. and it's an 8-week turnaround. And the last type is general operating support, very similar to how we do, it's exactly how we define it in our responsive grant process. This is meant for flexible funding. So if you are a smaller organization and you have more time-sensitive requests than the responsive grant allows, which funding decisions aren't made till July, then you can come through this process as long as you have an operating budget under 2 million. We're not going to be asking you how you're going to use these dollars. We're not going to be prescriptive. Are going to allow you to use this as flexible funding to achieve the mission of your organization. And these are all one-year grants, and you can ask for up to 15,000, and the turnaround time is all 8 weeks. And Sarah's going to talk a little bit about our sponsorship process.
I noticed that there was a question about this, so hopefully I can answer it, or we can get to it when we stop for questions after I do this piece on sponsorships. So these are sponsorships for those organizations in Greater New Haven. Valley also does sponsorships, and Valerie will talk about that further on in the webinar. These are for support for one-day fundraising events. They could be either virtual or in person. We also support neighborhood events through this sponsorship. We have supported online platforms to host virtual events that's available through this. That's what I mean by virtual formats to host one-day fundraising events. It's for up to $2,500. That's the most you could ask for. Most of the grants are smaller than that, I have to say. It's a rolling application, so whenever you're ready, we do encourage you to try to apply at least 60 days or more before the actual event happens, because this is a 3 to 4 week turnaround. So don't wait until the last minute to ask for support, because you may be disappointed, but think ahead. If you have something coming up, that fundraising event, and you're looking for a sponsorship, apply to us early. And you can see the applications are available online on our website.
Great, and we're going to stop now for some questions. Can we apply for both small grant and responsive grants, Sarah?
Yes, you can. But again, think about where you want to put your energy and what's critical. If you have a real critical need right now for a small grant, and because the process, and you want to apply to the responsive grant process as well, but the answer is until July, and that might be a little bit too late for an investment now, sure, apply for a small grant. It doesn't stop, it will not prevent you from asking for a responsive grant as well.
Great, I'm going to send you this one too, Sarah. Can general operating support funds be used for starting/funding a financial reserve for a nonprofit?
No, we do not grant money that then is held in a fund for future use. The funds that we provide to the to an organization are expected to be used within the time period in which it's given. The money is grant available from the day of the vote until the end of the term of the grant.
Jackie, this one's for you. After updating Give Greater, can an organization request to be reviewed prior to grant submission and make sure it is complete?
Oh, Stephanie will be in touch to make sure that it's complete. If it's not complete, then Stephanie will be in communication constantly through the process. Any questions that you have, and her contact information will be at the end of this presentation. Any questions you have, she will be able to support you through that.
Great. Can small nonprofits with operating budget under $100,000 apply and be funded under responsive grants? Yes. You can certainly apply, and if you're looking for general operating support, you could be funded under the responsive grant process, or like Sarah says, if you're looking for something sooner, or if you're new to the foundation, you might just want to start by submitting a small grant. You're certainly eligible with that operating budget size, and you can also come through small grants and ask for general operating support. So either or. Okay, great. So we're gonna go on to Valerie Knight DeGangi, who's going to talk about the grant opportunities through the Valley Community Foundation.
Thanks, Denise, and hello from the Valley to everyone joining us this afternoon. The grants that we're going to be talking about now are specifically for Valley-based organizations or those that are serving the Valley community. Just like the ones that we've just gone through, the ones previous were just New Haven. These are specific to the Valley. Community grants are small grant opportunities for civic organizations, and the link for that grant application is already up on the Valley Community Foundation website. Grants range from $250 to $2,500. Sponsorships are similar to what has been described about the Community Foundation for Greater New Haven sponsorship program. The link for the application is also up on our website. It may not exceed $2,500 per event or $2,500 per org per year. So if you have a couple of events that come up or will be coming up in 2022, and you can split that $2,500 request between them, feel free to do so. Our needs and opportunities process is up to $10,000. It is a rolling process, and the link is up on the Valley Community Foundation website. And last but not least, the COVID-19 fund has been in effect since the pandemic began in 2020. We have partnered with the Valley United Way, the Valley Chamber of Commerce, and the Valley Council for Health and Human Services to support the Valley COVID-19 Response and Recovery Fund. As you can see from this slide, it's an ongoing and rolling process and can be found on our website. The current grant focus for this fund is on vaccination support and awareness, and there is a grant limit of $5,000. Feel free to reach out to me for any additional questions about that fund that you may have. Community grants are for civic engagement. This grant program provides access to support for small grassroots organizations that are mostly volunteer and neighborhood. They have two or fewer full-time equivalent staff members, and they're in our communities of Ansonia, Derby, Oxford, Seymour, and or Shelton, or whose majority of the services are performed in these towns. Examples of prior support include, but are not limited to, funds for neighborhood cleanups, community gardens, elderly and parent activities, and youth engagement projects. The application is up now on our website. One important note for those of you who have applied for a community grant from us in the past, you no longer have to use our budget form. We still, however, require you to show your expenses and revenue, if you have any, for what you're planning to do if you receive a community grant from us. And you can see that the deadline to apply is Friday, March 4th, 2022 at 5 p.m. Sponsorships, again, are for one-day events. They are available to orgs that are serving our communities, those 5 that are listed or whose majority of services are performed in these towns. The org must be a 501c3 or equivalent, or must have a fiscal sponsor. Again, just as has been described for the Community Foundation for Greater New Haven, we are considering both virtual and or in-person events. And there is that limit of the up to $2,500. Applications are received on a rolling basis, and we would ask that you submit it at least 60 days prior to the event when you are planning to have it. That gives us enough time to be able to get it through our processing queue. The application is available up on our website. Our needs and opportunities grants are for innovative and ongoing programs and emergency needs. So you can liken this particular grant program to what has already been described by the Community Foundation for Greater New Haven staff to their small grants program, except they have a higher limit in small grants, and they have a little bit more of a flexible focus for the grants that they're talking about. For the Valley group, We are looking for specific funds to do such things as repair a damaged boiler or a leaking roof. I saw that come up a lot in the chat. People were asking, can that, be used to fund something like this? Absolutely. We've also funded the Riverfront Greenways Guide, which helped people navigate the lovely walkways and riverfront greenways that we have in the valley. Organizations must be 501c3 or equivalent, same 5 organizations, the same 5 municipalities that are part of our requirement for the entire thing, up to $10,000 rolling, and they are accepted all throughout the year. They are typically acted on within a 60-day time frame. And we're gonna, as you see, the applications are up on the website. Jackie's gonna read some questions for us now before we move on to the last part of my part of this presentation.
Thank you. So the first question that came in, what is considered the year? If you received a previous small grant last year, is it month to month or is it a calendar year? Denise, can you give us that one?
Sure. So this question comes up a lot, actually. So if you received a small grant in 2021, we ask that all the grant funding is expended. So you've spent the whole grant and that you submit a report. So as long as you do those 2 things, you could come again this year to apply again. Anytime, as long as you've spent the grant dollars and you've submitted your report.
Thank you. Denise or Sarah, what's the difference between the Basic Needs Fund and the COVID-19 Response Recovery Fund? Can I apply for funding to help with utility assistance as we did last year?
Well, we have a special emphasis on helping to support issues around the pandemic and COVID through our small grants, as well as through our responsive grant making process. And we found last year when we were doing general operating support that a lot of organizations were trying to manage the pandemic for their organization and the people that they serve. We no longer have a COVID fund specifically for that purpose, but the Valley does, as you saw. And so Valerie, you may want to answer about the specificity for the COVID fund for the Valley.
Sure, I'd be glad to, Sarah. And the answer to that question is, as I've mentioned before, even though the focus right now is on vaccination support and awareness, if there is a need over and above those topic areas, please just email me or contact me, and I'd be more than happy to talk you through that even further.
If we're talking about the COVID, the Basic Needs Fund that's going to be coming, that's still to be determined, the process still to be determined. We don't know exactly what the framework is going to be, but utility assistance, if you're talking about utility assistance for those people who are having trouble paying their utility bills, could be a possibility through those funds.
Okay, thank you. And that's all the questions for now. So Valerie, we'll go back to you.
Thanks, Jackie. So we have put together some steps that we think are appropriate before you apply for any of the grant processes that we have described thus far, or for any grant from any other organization. We suggest the following for you. Number 1, please do your research. Find out as much as you can about the work that you are proposing to do. Chances are very good that someone else out there may be doing something similar and can provide you with the advice and support that you need to get your project done. There's great sources of information out there, websites, there's the wellness report in the Valley Indicators report. There are a number of different sources that you can turn to in order to provide that research for the need and for the sustainability of whatever project you're looking to do. Talk to other people. Understand the funder's internal process. We hope today we've given you a little bit more of insight into both the Community Foundation for Greater New Haven and the Valley Community Foundation's internal processes. Do that with any grant that you are applying for. Also, look at how the research is going to support the need for your program or your organization to do the work. Next, identify collaborators and partners. These can be private, public, they can be community leaders, funders, government entities, other nonprofits that you can work with. We don't want it to be a forced situation of collaboration. You don't just need to partner with someone so that you can check off a box that says, hi, I'm collaborating. But we do, if it's organic and it's authentic, we do suggest that you look to do that because it can certainly strengthen the work that you're talking about doing. Last but not least, structure your program and request. Define your goals, your outcomes, and your measures. Prepare a preliminary budget and then write an implementation plan. Develop a fundraising strategy. We at both foundations can be a piece of that. But as you heard from Sarah earlier, we're not the only piece of your funding strategy. Select potential funders, such as us, such as others that are serving or you can find them on websites. They may be serving in the Valley and the Greater New Haven region. We expect that you will just try and find the best fit for the work that you are doing. Then write your proposal. Before submitting your proposal, please make sure that you have someone else read it and that all possible questions are answered. We all have the tendency to use terms and jargon that are specific to our areas of expertise, and others not in our field may have no idea what an acronym or the technology you're talking about could be. So just really get someone who doesn't really know the work that you are doing, have them read through it, make sure it makes sense, make sure it's grammatically correct, spelling correct. We don't give extra points, by the way, for spelling and grammar, but just all I can tell you is that when we are reading through all of these applications, it just makes it that much easier for everyone who's reviewing the applications to understand what you're trying to accomplish.
Okay, and going on to the next slide. So now you've heard about all of the processes that are offered combined from the Valley and New Haven, for New Haven, Greater New Haven only, and for the Valley only. Now it's time for you to make a decision as to which one or ones you can apply for. What's the right application for you? So what are some of the criteria that you might have in mind as you're thinking about which is the right application? So the first thing to think about is your readiness. If you're not ready with the project, Valerie just gave a great description of what you need to be application ready. You have to have your outcomes ready. You have to have this ready to go. If you're not ready to meet a deadline, then maybe you would like to think more about a rolling process when you might have your program fully fleshed out, that you've got all the ideas together, that you've talked with partners, that you're ready to go. So deadline or rolling, which is right for you? What's the eligibility criteria? There are some that are limited by geography, some that are limited by organization size. Which ones are right for you? Which ones do you qualify for? Where do you fit in? What's the level of funding that you've needed? As the grant award size goes up, so does the competition. So apply for what you need. If you are looking for operating support, you can come for a small grant and get $15,000 within 8 weeks or so. If you want a general operating support that's more than $15,000, then you have to go through the responsive process, but that's a more competitive process. So weigh very carefully, where can you come in and what level of funding is really needed to accomplish your program or sustain your organization. What type of funding is needed? Do you need that flexible general operating support funding? Or is it something that is specific to program or capacity building that you could get through a different program? When is the funding needed? If you are planning on a summer program, you may not be able to wait until July for an answer for that program. So you may need to come in to get an earlier answer. So take a look at when the responses are expected, when the awards are made, to understand when you can come in. And also, are you interested in 1 year or multi-year funding? If you would like to start planning ahead, offer stability to the organization and your ability to plan, then maybe a multi-year process and coming in through responsive is best. If you're in transition or you're new, it may not be the best time to come in for a multi-year grant because you want to be able to have a track record. You may want to be able to have a chance to plan, to get some experience and to really set a direction. So you may come in for a 1 year grant and then next year come back for a multi-year grant. We have some opportunities to talk this through even more because time is certainly limited on a day like today. We're doing a nuts and bolts webinar on January 25th. It's one registration and you can come in and leave when you would like to within the 2 hours that Valerie and I will be presenting together. The first half hour, we're going to go dive deeper into how to choose the right grant application. So we've talked about some of the criteria today. We'll talk a little bit more about that. If you have follow-up questions following today, you can certainly ask them during that half hour of the webinar. The second half hour of the webinar is specifically about the responsive grant process, which is all general operating. We go question by question through the application. This is the question. These are the elements of an effective answer. This is the kind of information that we're looking for in this answer. So it's really the cheat sheet for our responsive process. I encourage you, if you're coming to a responsive, whether you are a seasoned grant writer, whether you've been with us for the last 30 years, or whether you're brand new, things change every year. So it's worth taking that half hour to take a look at the application with us as we walk you through that. The next half hour is the Valley Community Foundation. We'll be looking at their needs and opportunities grants, their sponsorship grants, and their community grants. So those that are just specific to the Valley. Valerie can also answer questions there about the general operating support grants that are coming in through responsive. We can take some time, but specifically our Valley set aside time. And then at 11:30, we're going to take a look at those combined processes, the REACH grants, the consultant support, the Bipod Cohort, and then the New Haven specific small grants and sponsorships. And turning it back over to you, Denise.
Thanks, Jackie. So most of you on this webinar, I'm sure are familiar with this screen. So the majority of our application processes are online. And when you first click the link, you'll come to this login screen. So if you have an account already because you've applied to us before, you can put your email and password in. If you forgot your password, you can click that forgot password button. A temporary password will be sent to you and you can log in with the temporary password, and then you'll have the opportunity to create a more permanent password. If you are new to this site, either you've never applied to us before or you've applied prior to July 2019, which was when we changed to this new grant making portal, then you'd have to create an account. So you'd click create account, and then you would be directed to a screen where you could put your email address in and create your own password to create your account. So once you do that, you're all set. Your account allows you to apply online, but also report online, because your account will also allow you to log into your account, which shows all the applications you're working on, all the applications that you've submitted, all the reports that you're working on, and all the reports you have submitted. If you have any trouble logging in to our online portal, feel free to email me. All our emails are going to be at the end of this webinar, and I will help you. We'll either get on the phone or I'll help you via email, or sometimes I get on Zoom with people, whatever you need. But we don't want this to be a stressful process for you, so please reach out for help if you're experiencing some issues logging on. Okay, so before we go on to Give Grader, we're going to just look in the chat, see if there's any other questions.
I don't see any more.
Okay,
Let me see if there's anything.
Actually, we do have a, we do
Oh,
have a
there
couple.
it is.
so
Okay.
there's a few about the online account. If there's one, is there one account per organization? Yes, that is a really good question, and something we stress to organizations, because your account houses all your history, all your applications that you've submitted, all the reports that you've submitted. We really encourage organizations to just have one account. Some organizations have generic emails, like for instance, grants@yourorganisationname.org. And that seems to work for some people. That way more than one person can access the account with a generic email and log on. So we do encourage you just to have one account. Can more than one person have a login to your organization's dashboard? Not sure what organization dashboard means, but if it means for an account, an online account, then no, only one person can have the login. You can certainly share the credentials. I'm not sure what your policy is at your organization, but there is only one account that houses everything. Some organizations have multiple accounts, and all that means is your history is all over the place. So we really encourage organizations to really think about just having one account.
It also asks if you can download the application questions to work on and then cut and paste into the application.
Oh, thank you, Sarah. Yes. So when you're in your application, you'll see an option for printer-friendly version. Unfortunately, it doesn't come out as a Word document that you can work in, but you can certainly print that off and you can have it as a guide. You know, it really depends on your preference. You can, you know, then copy and paste into Word and work on a Word document and then copy and paste into the portal, but you can print a version that all the questions will be in front of you at once. It's just, it's actually, it's an HTML document.
Okay, I think we're on to Jackie.
Okay, welcome to Give Grader. So an integral part of your application is a Give Grader profile. For those of you who have Give Grader profiles from the past, they were much more extensive than they are now. We streamlined Give Grader during the pandemic, during 2020, and it is really about much less information that needs to go in, but it's so comprehensive. It will take, if you have no Give Grader profile at this time, you need to go to the givegrader.org page. There's a bar in the middle that's in gray that says open a profile, and you click there and it will connect you to Stephanie Chung. She'll need some information from you, your EIN and a few other things to be able to register you, to get the profile created, and then you get a blank page. It can take 6 to 8 hours to put together the full profile. You'll need 3 years of financial statements. You'll need a board list with their affiliations. It'll talk about your programs, your professional management, your staff, your volunteer leadership, and your mission, your accomplishments, and your needs. So those are the kinds of things that are there. I encourage you to take a look at givegrader.org. If you don't have a profile yet, read through someone else's profile. Read through a couple of them to see some good examples and some scant examples of what can be on there. I just listened to a webinar for Bank of America, and they do a donor profile, and it's the number of donors who now do extensive research about organizations before they give has skyrocketed. This is a great way for folks to be able to research organizations. So in addition to being part of your grant application, it's a wonderful thing to have a Give Greater profile, which allows donors to make informed decisions year round. It's searchable by issue area. So if you're working in the environment and someone is looking to fund environmental organizations, they can go there, search for environment, and you will pop up. You don't want to not be there. So fill out the Give Greater, fill it out thoroughly, thoughtfully, and timelessly. So as much as you can put in there about that will be evergreen, that will last for a long time for you. The things you'll need to go back each year to update are your board list, your board chair's term and your board chair, and your financial statements. We need to keep those up to date. So please do go in and create your profile. Stephanie will help you every step of the way. And it needs to be completed by the deadline, by the 17th. Going on to the next slide.
Yep, just having trouble moving, sorry.
Okay, yep, sometimes it gets a little, sometimes it freezes up, it slows down. So in addition to givegreater.org, we're also encouraging all nonprofits to participate in the Great Give. The dates are announced. It's May 4th and 5th, Wednesday and Thursday, May 4th and 5th of this year. It's our 36-hour giving challenge. Last year, in 36 hours, our 430 nonprofits raised about $3.5 million. So this is a great thing to be a part of. You need to register separately for that. If you did not already get an email that said you are automatically registered, then registration will open for you on February 1st. This is one paragraph of information and a nice picture. And if you have a video, put that in. It's not the extensive profile. It's also not givegreater.org. So completing a givegreater.org profile does not automatically put you into the Great Give this year. It will in the future. So I encourage you to put February 1st on your calendar if you're not already registered, so you can register then for the Great Give. And I hope to see you that. We also do lots of support webinars and workshops and boot camp to help folks be really successful. We're also doing this year a first timers workshop. So if you've never been in the Great Give and you don't know what it's all about, and the terminology means nothing, we'll walk you through it. We'll get you through to success.
Grant reporting, this is something that if you are a grant recipient, for the majority of our processes, we do ask you to submit a report. So if it's a 1 year, if you have a 1-year grant, we ask you at the end of your grant period to submit a report. We're really interested in seeing the progress that you've made on your projects or in your organization as a whole using our grant dollars. If you're a multi-year grantee, then after each year, we ask you to submit a report. Multi-year grants are conditional grants. So for instance, if you're awarded $90,000, $30,000 for each year, the second and third year are conditional based on progress of your outcomes. So we depend on those reports that you submit yearly, so we can tell what the progress on your outcomes are and to approve the subsequent year funding. And all reporting requirements need to be met in order to apply to the foundations, both foundations, for any type of grant. So if you're familiar with some of our eligibility quizzes before you go into the application, you'll see that we always ask, are you up to date with your reporting? And if you are in any doubt, Kara Strawn, her information will be available at the end of the webinar, you can reach out to her and she will let you know if you are up to date with all your reporting. Also, part of the responsive grant process is to update your Give Greater profile. So you really have to look on your terms of grant for responsive grants, or a lot of grants have terms of grant, to see if updating your Give Greater profile is part of your reporting requirements. And here's our resources page. So you're familiar with Sarah, Jackie, myself, and Valerie. Our information and our email is there. So if you have any general questions, you can reach out to all four of us, or any of us four. If you have any technical questions for the online application, you can reach out to me. If you have any specific questions about Valley Community Foundation grant making processes, please reach out to Valerie. Kara Strawn, who I just mentioned, if you have any questions about reporting or evaluation questions, need help creating outcomes or talking through your outcomes, you can email Kara. If you have any Give Greater questions, you can email Stephanie Chung, her email is there. And at the beginning of the webinar, when we talked about our new grant making process, the career pathways that's still being designed, you can reach out to Yolanda if you want to talk through if you feel like you may fit into that process. Yolanda would be happy to hear from you and have a conversation with you, and her email is there as well. And we're going to stop for some questions before we end. So please explain again the difference between Give Greater and the Great Give. Jackie, can you take that one?
Be happy to. It's really confusing. So givegreater.org lives 24/7, 365. It is required for a responsive grant application. It is recommended for lots and lots of reasons. It's a full profile of your organization that has your mission, your accomplishments, your needs, your programs, your professional and volunteer leadership, and hopefully 3 years of financials, and the donation page in case people are so moved by what they read, they want to give you a gift instantly. 24/7, 365. Under the same umbrella, the Great Give happens every year in May. This year it is May 4th and 5th. It's a 36-hour event. The site goes live on a few weeks before. People can only give during that short time. There are prizes, there are incentives, there's matching money. We throw a bunch of marketing money into the community to create buzz through print media, through social media, through television and radio, bus tails, billboards, all kinds of things to create a great buzz. We also support organizations promoting that fundraising event, and there's matching money that comes from the Valley Community Foundation and the Community Foundation for Greater New Haven, and a whole host of sponsors. So there's probably bonus money that will come to you as well as prizes. Last year, we had more than $220,000 in prizes and match money, in addition to what people raised. So that is a 36-hour event. That profile is one picture, your logo, and maybe a video and one paragraph. It is not an extensive profile. It has a donation page only for the period of the Great Give, and then that donation page goes away. It doesn't live year round, although you can see the information. There's not a lot of information there. You register for both of them separately, but once you are an active and approved Give Greater profile, you will automatically have a profile opened for you to update for the Great Give. This year, you've already missed that cutoff. So if you're creating a Give Greater profile this year, you will not have a profile created for you. But if you create your Give Greater profile this year, next year, when we automatically upload in January, you will automatically be uploaded, and then you can update from there. Hope that cleared things up.
Great. Another Give Greater question. Can you create a profile for Give Greater if you do not have 3 years of financials, and do you need to have a board?
Well, if you're a 501c3 in the state of Connecticut, yes, you must have a board. You have to have 3 people in order to stay a 501c3 in the state of Connecticut. So yes, they have to have the board. If you're new and you don't have financials, you need to have some kind of statement, at least for the coming year. If you don't have a history, then you have to have a budget for this year, so that we can see, so a donor could see how their money might be spent if they were to make a gift, so that they can have good information on which to base a decision.
Great. It seems like this is our last question. My nonprofit is newly registered, and agent lawyers currently working on a 501c3. I'm assuming this is a question if they're able to apply. So you need to have a 501c3 in order to apply, or a fiscal sponsor with a 501c3 in order to apply. So if you're working on getting your 501c3, you can either wait until you have your 501c3, or you can find a fiscal sponsor to apply on your behalf. And second part of the question, are you able to apply when you don't have 3-year full budget trail? Yes, as long as you're a 501c3 and serve residents in our 20-town region, even if you're, new and you don't have 3 years of a budget trail, that's fine. You can apply. Okay. Seems like that's the last of our questions.
Well, thank you.
Uh,
There was a lot that we included in this presentation, and as a reminder, a recording of this webinar will be posted on our website. So this is the end of the webinar, and thank you for participating. If you have any questions about today's webinar, or you would like guidance on which application to complete, please email or call. Please email Sarah, myself, Jackie, Valerie, or Denise. Your feedback is important to us. Please take a moment to fill out a short evaluation form. The link is in the chat, and it will also appear on your screen after the webinar has ended. Thank you and have a great weekend.